So I'm back doing the Moving Forward series episode after I took a couple of days off of this series, and that, I haven't had a lot of chance in terms of doing this series again because there's been a lot of videos I have to make, a lot of them related to playoff implication and also decision date that is coming up. But today I finally get a chance to talk about Sporting KC in the Moving Forward series episode, and I mentioned main time with Sporting KC. If there is one team that I think could be potentially getting themselves back into playoff conversation and can make the playoffs next season out of these teams that have all been eliminated, it's Sporting KC. But that didn't look like it was the case, at least for the first couple of months of the season, and really the first couple of months when they just on just a horrendous run of form that they were sitting in the bottom of the Western Conference for pretty much the majority part of the first half of the season, kind of doomed them in the end, and that they, even though they did try to do a late second half push, it just wasn't enough for them to make it to the playoffs. But still, they finished with a record of 11-7-15. Well, actually, their current record is 11-7-15. We'll see whether that's going to change. Well, it's going to change, but we'll see if it's going to be on the win category, the loss category, or the draw category after their decision day game is over. But as of now, they have 40 points. They've scored 41 goals this season while allowing 52 goals with a goal differential of -11, and currently they are 12th in the Western Conference. But in terms of the top goal scorer this season for Sporting KC, well, it's not surprised to see that William Agata is one of the top goal scorer along with Johnny Russell with 8 goals. I mean, Agata, as I mentioned a lot doing this video, was one of the key contributor of why this team had a turnaround in the latter part of the second half of the season, and they got that maybe they might have to make a big decision to make heading into the next off season, especially for Peter Vermes, making a decision of, well, what happened if Polito does come back to this team? Is it going to be Agata? Is it going to be Polito? Or is Peter Vermes looking to go with the 2-striker system? But Johnny Russell, of course, finished with 8 goals, which was kind of a down year for him because, after an incredible last couple of years with the Sporting KC team, this was definitely a year that he took a step back with only 8 goals. And the same goes with Daniel Showery with 7 goals. But then you got Eric Tommy with 3 goals, and Remy Voltaire finished the top 5 with 3 goals. Top assist leader, Daniel Showery leads the team with 5 assists. There wasn't really a lot of guys or a key contributor in the assist department for the Sporting KC side. A lot of guys are kind of stuck around like 5, 4, or 3 assists, which is why it's kind of shown here where the top assist leader only has 5 assists this season, followed by Roger Espinoza with 4 assists. They got Cam Duke, Felipe Hernandez, and Remy Voltaire with 3 assists, but there's also tons of guys that, as I mentioned, have ended up with 3 assists with this team. Now, in terms of the highlights for this season, well, they definitely hit the jackpot in the summer transfer window because, as I mentioned so many times during the latter part of this season, getting the likes of William Agata and Eric Tommy has really changed this team because we know Agata is a guy that has been a lethal goal scorer, and Eric Tommy are rounding up to being one of the best number 8 in the league right now, and that, because of the fact that they not only got reinforcement, but the reinforcement that they got, which again, it was kind of unknown when both of those guys that mentioned was coming in. We didn't know that whether or not is that going to work out because, Sporting KC, I think if you want to talk about transfers, some of the transfer that they made, especially during the winter transfer window, turns out to be bust. But at least for the summer transfer window, it definitely boomed in a way where they went on an incredible 5-2-1 run since August, and they kind of become the kings of the spoiling team in MLS, and the kings of spoiler in terms of spoiling every single team to have a playoff chances. Like, if you are a team that have some playoff aspiration, you do not want to face Sporting KC because you know that they're going to find a way to damage your playoff chances, and we've seen before where teams have faced them and that they come up with a loss that took a huge blow in their playoff chances. And it's also only fitting the fact that Sporting KC would be the one that eliminated the Seattle Sounder and ending the league currently active longest active playoff streak, and also handing the Seattle Sounders for the first time in their franchise history of not making the playoffs. Now, in terms of the lowlights for this team, well, it's the disastrous start to the season where, I mean, I knew in the beginning of the season not having both Polito and King was going to hurt this team, but I didn't think it was going to be at a point where, yeah, they were just not doing well at all, both on the goal scoring and defensive department. I mean, the defense has been an issue for the Sporting KC team for the past couple of years, and when you look at the amount of goals that they allowed, that kind of speaks to volume. But I will say that that number is a little bit kind of misleading, considering the fact that most of the goals that they've allowed during the 52 goals that they gave up this season has come in the beginning of the season. But yeah, that defense was really bad in the beginning of the year, and a combination of the attack, just they don't have a number 9 on this team. They had to rely on Kyrie Shelton every single game, which, yeah, if you rely on Kyrie Shelton game after game, it's not going to end well. But also, I talked about how guys like both Russell and Sharawi did not stepped up, and that's kind of brings me to my second point. They did not have the impact start that they were hoping for, and they did not really help the attack go forward as what I thought it is. Because again, in the beginning of the season, I mentioned those two guys need to carry the low of the attack, and while both of them kind of did, I mean, both of them combined with 15 goals at the end of the season, it was still not enough considering that they just don't have two of the most dynamic attacking core of their team pretty much for this whole season, and both of the next man up in terms of stepping into those holes just did not help whatsoever. And then, of course, the last lowlights of the season is the U.S. Open Cup loss against the Sacramento Republic. I mean, that, again, one of the reasons why Sporting KC was also losing a lot of game was because they were solely focused on the U.S. Open Cup. Like, the U.S. Open Cup was literally the only thing that they can salvage their season, and they went pretty deep in the U.S. Open Cup up to the point where they play against Sacramento. And while Sacramento, we know that they are definitely the kings of upset in the U.S. Open Cup, and are that Cinderella story that end up going all the way to the finals. For Sporting KC, you would say that game was a big opportunity to where you've been able to do well in the U.S. Open Cup, and they're also known as a team that they don't care about your Cinderella story. They will put a crushing blow to your Cinderella story, and that did not happen in that game against Sacramento. Now, again, partially it's because of the fact that Sporting KC had to go on the road, and most of the game that they play in the U.S. Open Cup is at home, and home field advantage is definitely a big thing in the U.S. Open Cup, especially from what we've seen this season, where a majority of the home team are able to get wins to move on into the next round. But still, this is the team that looked like they were putting all their eggs in one basket, and this was a big opportunity for them to really get to the U.S. Open Cup and maybe even be the favorites too in that competition. But they aren't able to do so. They lose it in a penalty kick shootout, and yeah, I mean that was like, after when they lost that U.S. Open Cup, you knew that it's a lost season, because again, that was it. That was the only saving grace for this team to consider this to be kind of a successful season. But with that loss, it's pretty much a lost season, and considered to be an epic failure of a team that it's hard to believe. Last season, it looked like the window was once again open, with them being in third place in the West, and once again looked like they were going to make a run for the playoffs. And now it seems like they're back in 2019 form, where they can't get things going, and now missing the playoffs once again. Now, the biggest win for the Sporting KC side, well, there was definitely some big wins, but I'm going to go with the 4-1 win against the Portland Timbers as the biggest win. Not only one of the biggest margin that they had this season, I think equaling the 4-1 win that they had against Minnesota United, but I think that was the revenge game against the Portland Timbers, because as we all know what happened a couple of months when they faced the Timbers earlier this season at Providence Park, where they gave up 6 goals in the second half and lost 7-2 in that much. You knew that Sporting KC needed to have some redemption after such a disastrous loss that they had. And also that 7-2 loss was really the one that a lot of Sporting KC fans were not only panicking, but maybe really started to demand Peter Vermees to be fired from this team. And that this is also kind of the time where I even question that, is there going to be some soul searching that needs to be done the off season. Well, it turns out that was not the case because in the very next game they won against the Timbers. They won 4-1. That was part of a very good run that they were on. And then, of course, the biggest loss. I mean, I could have gone with that 7-2 loss against the Timbers, but I think in terms of overall the biggest loss that really means for Sporting KC this season has to be that game against Sacramento. Again, that was a game where that was the game that can salvage what could be a lost season. They weren't able to do so, and therefore it's easily the biggest loss this year. Even though I know technically in terms of biggest loss, I shouldn't count other competition that is not league plays, but in this case it has to be. Like, if you ask any Sporting KC fans, I mean, they'll mention the 7-2 loss against the Timbers as the biggest loss, but the true biggest loss is the one against Sacramento Republic in the U.S. Open Cup semifinal. Now, revelation for this team, I mean, it's William Agata and Eric Tommy. I don't really need to mention too much about it because I've already mentioned it so many times of how one guy is started to become one of the best number 8 in the league, and the other is a guy that is just cannot stop scoring ever since he came to Sporting KC. Now, the disappointment, I actually decided to cheat again and decided to not really choose any player, but other than the fact that I just decided to mention any youth players on this team. So any young players that maybe had some potential to do well, guys like Cam Duke, Felipe Hernandez, and even guys that they brought overseas like Johnny's in this team. They really didn't do much on this team, and that has to be a concern if you're a Sporting KC team, where you want to develop some of these youth players to really be the next kind of core that they can form in, and they just haven't been able to do so for the most part. So that's definitely a huge disappointment if you're Sporting KC, and it's been a disappointment too. For a team that has good facility and that you would think that they would develop some good youth player, they just haven't done so in these past couple of years, and this is another example of it. Now, moving forward for the Sporting KC team, again, I think this team should be set up to be back in the playoff run when they get Kinda and Polito back in the squad. Now, obviously, like I said with the Polito situation, now that William Agata is red hot right now, and assuming if he's going to continue to be red hot heading into next season, what do you do now? Do you decide to maybe play a 2-striker system, or maybe move Polito to another spot in the squad? Because I don't think that's going to work. I mean, Polito for a long time, he's been a sole number 9, but with Agata being there, it's going to be an interesting situation there. I mean, I guess this is kind of like a good problem for Sporting KC had, where you have like 2 good strikers that can score goals, and that now which one you're going to choose. I mean, for me personally, if I was Peter Vermees, I'll stick with William Agata, because with Polito, as much as I know he is one of the most lethal goal scored in the league ever since he came to MLS, he's been so injury prone. Like, he's been spending more time in the IR or missing due to international duty than actually been on the pitch. So I think with the way that we talk about when player is injured so many times and become injury prone, it just gets to a point where they could lose their ability a little bit in terms of the performance that they have before they come to injury. So there's no guarantee that Polito could be coming off of this ACL injury and can get himself back into the form that he has. So why put him there, and why hoping that is the case when you already have a guy that knows how to bang in the goals and are basically your best number 9 that you probably have besides Polito since maybe Dom Dwyer a couple of years ago. But yeah, that should be a very interesting decision. And again, I don't know if Vermees is going to go with a 2-striker system. He doesn't usually play that system. He usually only have one number 9 there. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting situation that they're going to do. The second thing that's moving forward is this the passing the torch from Melia to Postgame in the goalkeeping spot? Now, I think the answer is probably no, because I think Tim Melia should be back next year, and he is still going to be the starting goalkeeping. But I think this season, before he suffered an injury, you can definitely see Tim Melia started to be becoming a little bit more mortal and started to become a guy that father time is started to slowly creep up on him. I mean, I think he's going to be like 39 or 38 heading into next season. And even though I know goalkeeper, they have a more longevity in their career, it gets to a time where there could be a case where Melia, I think he maybe have 1 or 2 year left in the tent before he might call it. And for Sporting KC, I think they're kind of blessed that they have Postgame in that spot to kind of pass the torch. And Postgame, even though I know he's been kind of inconsistent at times, that's going to be the case with young goalkeeper. He's still a really young goalkeeper, and that as much as he's inconsistent, I think he could be a guy that they could use as the heir of Tim Melia. Now, whether or not if he's going to be as good as Tim Melia, time will tell. But at least during the time when he's been relieving Tim Melia because he's been injured, I think he's been pretty good for a young goalkeeper stake. And then lastly, in terms of the moving forward, well, actually, there's two more point. One point I'll talk about after this last point I made in the moving forward series is they need more reinforcement at the back. I mean, it's simple as that. I mean, that back line definitely stabilized latter part of the season. I thought both Isimat Marine and Fontas really started to stabilize after they were just horrible in the beginning of the year. But still, even then, both of those guys, one of the big concerns you have with both of those guys is that they've also been very injury prone. And when you decide to put in another defender in there, it basically is not the same. So I think they need reinforcement at the back, and that this has kind of been the case for the past couple of years for Sporting KC. They just could not quite get that back line as good as what we seen doing the days where it's hard to believe this used to be one of the best defensive team in the league with the Iko Para kind of days back in the mid 2010s. But yeah, we'll see whether they add more reinforcement at the back, and even in the fullback position, that is still a big question mark too, because Graham Zusi is going to be another year older, and the same goes with Roger Espinoza, which kind of brings me to the last point I didn't put on the board, where if you have Zusi and Espinoza continue to start more minutes for this team, then that is a concern, because as much as I know both of these guys are trying to defeat Father Time, eventually it's going to caught up to them, and there's times where you definitely can see evidence that they have lost a step or two there. So they need replacement in terms of that core of a player, because again, this team is kind of in an interesting situation where they're kind of right now having they still have the old core from the years that they keep winning for the past couple of years, but also they have new core player that can get this team back to competitiveness, which is why, like I said, after this incredible run that they had in the second half of the season, I think that maybe have changed the aspect where maybe they don't need to tear this one down, and certainly they doesn't seem like that is the case, because they have signed a couple of guys that is part of this core, and what they thought that they were going to tear it down to a long-term contract extension. That's kind of my thinking, that I think they're doing the right thing of not tearing it down, even though again in the beginning of the season it looked like that was going to be the case. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and if you're a Sporting KC fan, what do you think are highlights, lowlights, your biggest win, your biggest loss, your revelation, and the most disappointing player so far, or most disappointing player this season. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.